Morning, everybody. Beautiful morning in Thailand, 8 a.m. over here, 8 p.m. on the East Coast. It's been a kind of a crazy morning for me. I spent like 40 minutes trying to get the tech gremlins out of my computer. It's just, it's been like 2 months since our last stream and all these updates, and camera's not working. Why isn't the camera working? Oh no, I don't have enough HDMI ports. But we managed to make it work. Question for you guys. I have some music playing in the background. Helps me focus. It's like some like Celtic stuff. Don't know if it sounds okay with the noise gate. If it's an issue audio wise, I can turn it off. Just let me know. That's okay. Okay, we are here. I am fed and watered. I just went down to, there's a 7-Eleven like super close by, so I just like ran down there and I grabbed a banana. And now we're ready to draw. Say good morning to everyone. It's been a couple months since I've seen you guys. Hello. Who we have here? Chrysanthemum, hello. Fantastic Sarcastic Michaela. Great to see you guys. Paige and Corey. Alaska Jeff, great to see you. And it's gonna be a chill stream. I'll show you guys more. Okay, music cuts out when I stop talking. I thought that might happen. Maybe I'll just put the music really low, so hopefully it's not too much of an issue. Just enough for me to have something in the background. How's that? No, fantastic, sarcastic. That's my nightmare. What do I talk about? What do we talk about? I don't know. What's new in the world? Okay. I lowered the music a little bit. Let me know if that's an issue. I can cut it off. Okay, so just a recap of where we are. I've been working on slowly on the final drawing for the Legend Seeker cover. Let me adjust this so you guys can see that. So here is the final drawing, and I posted an image in the live Legend Seeker chat of where I currently am, which is where I'll show you guys today. I'm working on the underpainting right now. So we'll probably work on that a little bit. I'll show you. We'll try to do a little bit of painting. And just as kind of a recap for my process, I do a version of old masters painting where I build up the painting slowly, layer by layer. So first I do thumbnails, then I will do a final drawing after I figure everything out, and then we're going to paint on top of that drawing in monochrome, which is the underpainting, and then we put color on top of that, which is the painting. And traditionally this would be done with oils, but I am recreating it digitally. I also use this process with real oils in my other work, but this piece is very, very complex. And I think if I tried to do it in oil, it would be a disaster. I'm not quite there yet. So let's, so we're doing it digitally. And yes, Dragon Noodle Soup Gaming, I'm on the other side of the planet. So it's morning here. I am actually in the future. I can tell you the future. My future is pretty normal. We also had a request. Maybe I think we can probably doodle some creatures from Legend Seeker. This was a suggestion by Frost. We've got some creatures, some Erudia specific creatures called Whistlings. I think it'll be fun to do a little bit of monster doodling. So we can do some of that, and then we can work on the underpainting. Let's see. Do I mix my own colors with oils? Yes, I do. I mix my own colors. I don't have any specific palette that I use. It's actually been a while since I've worked on an oil painting, but yeah, it's pretty fun. Okay, so any requests on what you guys would like to see first? Do you guys want to see the underpainting process first, or should we dive into some doodles? If I do some doodles, it'll be kind of a nice warm-up. We can try that. Another technical difficulty. I couldn't find this pencil that I liked. It's like my HB pencil. I was like freaking out for a minute, like, where's my HB pencil? And then I figured out, oh, okay, I can just use a B pencil. It's not that big a deal. But you know, if you have a special tool and it's like one of your lucky tools, you know. And when it goes missing, you're like, ah. Okay, let's start off with some doodles. I'll read the description first. We can do some. I'll just walk you through the whole process. I'll read the description. So this is from Frost. This is on the Legend Seeker chat. Whistlings are small ocean-hued worm-like nuisance flyers measuring a foot or two in length. Whistlings nest in the hills and coasts of the entire caustic strand, where their distinctive cries haunt the villages, and they constantly harry the fishermen for scraps and shiny objects. So they're basically like seagulls, like really annoying seagulls. Yeah, funny story. My son watched Finding Nemo like last week, and he's been saying mine. When I read this, I was like, oh yeah, seagulls. These little predators often swallow items they can't digest, which get coated by the slime in their stomachs to create worry stones, which the whistlings eventually regurgitate in their nests. These natural stones are highly valuable, and the youths of the Strand routinely raid these nests, looking for even one such treasure. More valuable than oyster pearls, the largest rumored stone of this type is an ancient specimen that supposedly adorned a magical crown worn by an oracle who lived on the Strand in ancient times. A devotee of Arintha, she regularly gazed into the shining bay, using its tranquil silvery waters as a great scrying pool. And then there's some other descriptions of bees. We have firefly bee honey. Firefly bees might be cool to doodle as well, actually. Let's see how far we get. Yeah. So they're like tiny wyverns. Yes, Dragon Noodle Soup Gaming. They are like tiny wyverns. So they're going to be dragon-like, but they're also quite small. Let me see. I usually start with a light pencil. Actually, first, let me get some reference up. I'm just gonna pull some images of wyverns. No, I'm not gonna do that first. First we're going to, before we pull up reference, this is actually really important, and sometimes I forget this. We're just gonna do some shape design, and I'm just gonna try to get some like very fluid, dynamic shapes in here. Can you guys see that? Yeah, okay. Just whatever I'm thinking of right now. So they're like tiny wyverns. And then later, I'm going to look up some actual references of real animals and try to incorporate that. I find if I go into the reference too early, then it tends to dictate the image a little bit too much, and it can be hard. I'm thinking about seagulls. What do seagulls look like? They kind of have this like, just is purely from memory, this kind of beak that looks like that. So it would be kind of interesting if we merge those shapes just to kind of give that impression, right? And then they have a kind of a puffed up chest like that. But a wyvern would have a longer neck. Right. So we're just doodling some happy little shapes, just trying to get a feel for what this thing could look like. Tail or no tail, I don't know. We want it to resemble a wyvern, but not just be a mini wyvern because it's its own thing, right? Okay. Kind of thinking of maybe a creature with a distended belly, because these things supposedly make these stones in their bellies. So I'm just gonna have like a shape here. I'm kind of picturing it sitting on its haunches. And this step is meant to be very messy. The point is let's just get some shapes down. Let's just get the juices flowing. Just try to come up with as many ideas as possible. I don't know if it's going to have a beak, Dragon Noodle Soup Gaming, or maybe just the turn of its snout will slightly resemble a seagull, just to kind of give that impression. Right, so here. So in that, we could also go, So this one is more slim. This one's a little chubbier. This one's slimmer. seagull would be like. I'm just capturing the silhouette of a seagull. See if I can get any ideas from that. That looks more like a duck because I'm not looking at reference right now. Or a dodo bird. Are these what are the what's the personality of these creatures like? Are they kind of dopey? Are they kind of clever? Because that's going to the personality of these creatures is going to influence the shape design of the creatures. Let's read. Let's read the description again. They harry the fishermen. They're predators. Some kind of. So they're not like dopey herbivores. They're predators. We could go for something a little bit more snake-like, slim. Ross says could be either and or both depending on the individual creature. Okay. If they're anything like seagulls, then they're somehow both smart and very dumb. That's true. Seagulls are very clever when it comes to them trying to part you from your food. Okay, we'll try to figure that out. I'm kind of picturing almost like a seahorse, like face silhouette, maybe just kind of a blunted snout like this. Maybe a crest, but all right. Okay. Okay, we've got some ideas there. Now I'm going to very quickly sketch out a couple of real life animals. So I'll do a real drawing. I'm going to look up some reference. I'll look up a seagull, snake. And we'll do a, dragons are not real. Dragons themselves are not real, but it will be helpful to just really quickly doodle them anyway. All right. So just going to move this aside. Actually, seagulls actually have a much slimmer beak than I had remembered. And their necks are actually quite thick, which is good because that means they can swallow more of their stolen food. Those are actually quite stocky too. And they have teeny little legs. These little noodle legs. With knobbly knees. Very small eyes. Their beak. My favorite bird. What is my favorite bird? I like chicken. I like eating those. No, I'm just kidding. I think my favorite bird is probably an African gray parrot. They're really smart. I had a friend once when I was in college. She was much older. Um, she was teaching at the university, and she had an African gray parrot, and the parrot was in her will because they lived so long. So I think she'd had it since it was a baby, and she'd only had it for like 7 years. But this thing was gonna live past 100. So yeah, so the bird was in her will. They're so clever. But I like crows. Crows are pretty cool. They have a really cool bird look to them. Extremely smart. And a group of them is called a murder of crows, which is so metal. Okay, so we got that. Let's look up let's just look up a seahorse because seahorses have pretty cool silhouettes. And they have big bellies, which is actually pretty appropriate. At least the males do. Right. So a seahorse will have a very long, almost funnel-like face. And they have kind of like that. I cannot stress the importance of taking inspiration from life and from nature, because nothing is stranger or more interesting or more detailed than nature itself. And when you use real animals as inspiration for your imaginary ones, it gives them a realism that makes them more believable. There's a fin down here. Little dots like this. What other animal? Let me draw the rest of it. Wyvern. Let's very quickly sketch out a wyvern. Just try to get a little bit of dragon inspiration in there, even though dragons can look like anything. They are already imaginary creatures. I'm just gonna try to find a picture I like. I will, for the next stream, I want you guys to see the reference that I'm looking at. Try to figure out how to incorporate that into the stream. So many different kinds of dragons. It's quite hard to find a picture of a wyvern because there's so many different variations. Yeah, fantastic sarcastic. I just Hmm. I'm getting the hang of OBS. Seems like a pretty simple program to use. Just have to sit down and do it. All right, well, let me just pick one. The Game of Thrones dragons are wyverns, right? I think so. Game of Thrones dragon. Yeah, they are. They're very spiky, though. They're like beefy. I'm not sure beefy is what we're going for here, but because these creatures have to be kind of spry and sly. Okay, that's cool. Okay, we'll do a really quick silhouette here. Excuse me. I'm getting over a cough as well. I've had this cough for like weeks. It's the kind that just won't go away. I'm sure many of you guys in the northern hemisphere can relate. This particular dragon has actually kind of a small head. This is the one I'm looking at, an image of the Game of Thrones dragon. It's kind of a small head relative to its body. Thick neck. Large, like kind of almost barrel chested. So everything about the shape design here says like beefy predator. If this dragon was a human, it would be at the gym all the time. It would throw down the weights and go ah! Every time it threw down the weights. So I'm not sure this is the direction we want to go in. But just fun. It's fun to draw. Just to kind of get the juices flowing. Little eye right here. Claw. Okay. So we got a couple animals here. Can't think of any other inspiration that I want to take, so let's just try combining some of these shapes. And seeing if we can come up with an interesting creature. I want them to be sly, so I'm going to start with the face first, or the head. I'm going to go for a kind of a seagull-like head. Long, elongated a little bit. But instead of a beak, I'm going to have a dragon-like snout, basically. I'm going to give it small beady eyes. A crest, a little bit like a seahorse. And a dragon. Dragons have crests too. Frost says, I do love the idea of part of their head resembling a seahorse. Makes sense given their habitat. Right, because they dive under the water. So let's make the neck a little bit seahorse-like, and we're going to give him a crest that's a bit seahorse-like. I'm going to make the eyes like a seagull. Let me switch. I might switch to my Fadler 925. Have it ready in my hand. So it's going to have a longer neck than a seagull, but I kind of want it to almost sit like a seagull. So let's try that. If this doesn't work, we can just fix it. I'm just trying to put together shapes that work and think about the anatomy. Now, I think it would be fun to make the tail curl a little bit like a seahorse. Well, let's see. But now, legs and wings, where would they attach? Let's see. If this was the sternum here, then the wings might attach here, but then we have to bring this back down here a little bit. So I'm just going to redraw. So this would be the neck, vertebra, spine. We're just going to trace some I think this would be the hip joints. I think they would have small legs. We have no need for beefy legs because they're primarily divers and flyers. Okay, let's try this again. Is everything okay with the stream? Can you guys see okay? I can't picture the legs, so I'm going to try drawing this thing from another angle. So this is a front angle. Maybe I need to make the belly a little bit lower. Let's make the wings bigger. I'm going to give it wyvern wings. But they're also divers. So, what would the wings look like if these creatures were meant to paddle with them or swim with them? Maybe I would make the fingers, the so-called fingers of the wing, a little bit more spread out with some webbing between them. By the way, we'll extend the stream by a little bit since we started late. Extend the stream by like 15 minutes or so. Okay, I have a shape that I like. I'm gonna switch over to my trusty Staedtler 925 pencil here. See if I can get some more detail. And then we'll try drawing this thing from a different angle. Oh, that's cool. Let me zoom in. Hold on. Can I zoom in a little bit? You guys can see that better. Okay. You guys can see that a little bit better. Just pulling up my references again so that I have them kind of ready to go. I can glance at them. Okay. Can you guys see that okay? Sometimes it gets blurry. Come on. Come on. There we go. I'm gonna give it like these. Dragons always have heavy brows. Makes them look a little bit intimidating. And these kind of this recessed eye area. I'm going to copy that seahorse texture on the neck here. Let's make the area around the eyes dark. Looks a little bit more sinister. Almost like bandit-like. And let's add some seahorse-like texture because seahorses almost kind of have these like, switch to my other pencil. Go. Seahorses have these protrusions, like this protrusion above the eye. They have one kind of above the snout, and they have them all down the side. So if you're looking at it in profile view, it would look like that. I think that looks pretty cool. Maybe there's even like a horn here. So I'll see if I can try to capture that. And actually, I'm gonna slim down these cheeks. I don't think I want those super chubby bird cheeks, because the chubby bird cheeks are too cute. So let's slim that down a little. Hollow out the cheek area a little bit. Okay. Let's see how this looks. Maybe those horns are a little bit too big. It's okay. We can always refine it later. Let's add some cheek spikes because they're wyvern-like. Little legs, little knees. They are not runners. I think when they dive, they would primarily use their tails for steering and paddling. like for propulsion. So actually we could make, I think I'll flatten the tail a little bit so that it's almost like a moving rudder. Now question, should this thing have scales or feathers or both? I do see a lot of images of dragons that are partly feathered. But it would depend on the function of the feathers, right? Because that's why animals look the way they do, is the accessory. It has to have some sort of function, or else it's vestigial. Okay, so here's that kind of a paddle wing. Sometimes wing anatomy breaks my brain, and it takes me a couple tries to figure out where all the bones are going, how it's folding. It's such a complicated structure. So trying to alter it is actually quite tricky. Frost says maybe only the males grow some few specific feathers for attracting mates. Could be cool, kind of like a crest on the head, or some brightness on the wings. Let's see. Gotta look at, okay, so I'm looking at images of dragon wings now because this thing is breaking my brain. And wings are just modified arms, just like bats. So we would have here would be the biceps and the triceps here, right? This is the forearm. But then the fingers are actually the wings. That's how it works in bats as well. And it's okay if the drawing gets a little bit muddy, because this is just an exploration. So the tricky thing is trying to figure out how these fingers, how can I make the fingers be paddle-like but also wing-like? That might be a bit complex here. If they're primarily seabird-like, would they be longer and narrower for soaring? it won't be necessary for them to flap so much, just coast on the ocean breeze. Yes, that's a good point. This particular specimen has a stone in its belly, so it's a Let's try drawing it from another angle. It's already past 9, so I don't know. Do you guys want me to keep on doodling this creature, or should we switch over to the underpainting? Time goes by very quickly. We have about another hour left in the stream. I'm going to try drawing it from another angle now that we've fleshed it out a little bit more. I'm going to give it a flat nozzle like a seahorse. Okay, thanks, Fantastic Sarcastic. I want to explore this a little bit more. So let's just roll with this for now. And make the head a little smaller. hate it when I when I get to the edge of the paper. It's okay. Here's the tail. So this thing is kind of sitting upright a little bit like a let me think here. Oh, I'm gonna give it larger feet actually. Like larger, flatter feet, like a duck. Just anything that can help propel it through the water. And here's that flat rudder-like tail. Dang. Sorry, hold on. Sorry, I didn't realize I was drawing off the screen. Okay. You guys can see that better now. I'm drawing almost like a see-through view, but then I'm going to go in with my pencil and clarify some of these lines. Let's see if we have a creature that makes sense. Okay. Beady eyes. Little bit of a recessed, pronounced brow, and a recessed eye like a dragon. Let me zoom in a little bit more. How much can I zoom into this thing? You guys can see. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Thank you, Frost. I feel like it's getting there. This is what it's like for all of my creature designs. It just kind of meanders and some stuff works, some stuff does not work. And then serendipity will just favor me with a design that that just kind of, that you're feeling. So I'm going to give this whistling a blunted snout that's a little bit more seahorse-like. Let's get some teeth in there. They are predators, after all. We're going to leave the feathers out of it for now. We'll just stick with scales. And this one's got a distended belly because it's holding a stone. Let's give you another protrusion there, like a seahorse. I'm going to give them little spots, like a seahorse. Okay. And let's attempt to draw this wing. I'm going to put a piece of paper down so I don't smudge the drawing underneath. Now there's compression here because the wings are folded. Wings. Okay, wings are the hardest part of the dragon. Okay, how about this? We're gonna give it kind of a paddle. Let me draw first. Normally, normally when you have a, like in a dragon's wing or a bat's wing, right? The wing part with all the webbing is the hand. You can imagine all the fingers are just really, really long with lots of webbing in between. So here is the forearm. Let me look at a bat wing. This might be a little bit tricky for me in the next 20 minutes. I might have to do some more thinking about it. I'm looking at a picture of a bat wing. Yeah, okay, so normally with a dragon wing or a bat wing, you have the claw that usually comes out right here. That would be the thumb. And then the wing bones, like, you could almost think about this part as the wrist, right? And then the wrist bones, like the finger bone, kind of come from the wrist like this, but they're extra long. So I don't know if I can make a paddle like wing that makes sense. I gotta think about that. Okay, well, this might be too tricky for my brain right now, so why don't we just give him a dragon's wing? But I'm gonna stew in that for a while. How can I alter that anatomy? That would be really cool. Okay. So here are the wings. This would be the back wing. We'll shade that in a little bit, so you can tell it's in the back. I think I actually need a little bit more room. Rookie error, going to the edge of the page. All right, okay. And then he's going to be sitting on his haunches. Let's just put a haunch right there. I think I can squeeze it in. There's a haunch. And then he's kind of laying flat. The tail is like flat right there. All right. So there's our whistling for today. Okay, guys, I think I'm going to, it's 9:30, so I think we can work on the underpainting a little bit. Let's switch gears. I'm going to show you where I am with that. I'm pretty happy with this little guy. I think he's cool. He's got a very interesting shape. Thank you for all of the input that you gave. Okay. Just a moment, guys. I have to arrange some stuff. My wireless keyboard broke. So now I have to use my keyboard for shortcuts, which is like all the way over here. This will be a good arm exercise. So here is where I am with the underpainting. This is only in the beginning stages. I've really just kind of added a couple of layers of paint on top of it. If this was analog, you could almost think of it as the first initial layers of wash, of oil wash or acrylic wash on top. I'm really just trying to lay down the values and the hierarchy, the value hierarchy in the piece. So this is still pretty early days, but you can see that for this particular painting, I want the foreground to be in shadow and the background to be very light. And this is called contre-jour lighting, which means it's backlit. It's very good for drama. It's very good for mood. I haven't done a painting like this before, so we'll see. We'll see how it goes. And I'm going to start with the background first. Basically, I'll work my way from back to front. It's going to take my brain a minute to switch gears and figure out where I want to start, so just bear with me. Oh, this is a crop. There we go. What are you doing, Photoshop? So the last time I was working on this, I was using actually watercolor brushes to try to get those washes in. And I was experimenting with a couple of with some new watercolor brushes. Because I want, in the early stages, I want to get as much texture in as possible. At the very end of the painting, all that built up texture looks very nice. And for those of you who aren't familiar with this piece yet, this is the Legend Seeker book 2 cover. So it is a book cover. If you can imagine this, the right side of the image is going to be the front. So that's where all the most important action has to be. And the left side of the image, where the Rudy Poos, these disgustingly adorable little creatures are, that's going to be the back of the image. So compositionally designing it so that it works not just as a front composition and then a back composition, but it also works together can be kind of tricky, but I think we managed to do it. I think I managed to do it. Hopefully. Fantastic Sarcastic, if you have any questions about my art speak, just let me know. I'm happy to explain. So, what I mean by value hierarchy is where all the lights and darks are in the image, and how you distribute those lights and darks determines how important certain parts of the image are and how readable it's going to be. So the most important part of this image is the foreground, because the characters are paramount. So I've already kind of blocked out that silhouette and made the foreground very dark. It could also work in the opposite way. So if the background was very dark, the foreground could be very, very light. And then I want to have my widest ranges of values in the important part. So the background, even though it's very light, I'm only planning for it to have just a couple of shades, a couple of different values. I want it to be very low contrast because it's secondary to the foreground, which is, where all the action is. So even though the foreground is very dark, I'm going to put like a higher range of values in there so that it catches the eye and you can tell immediately that it's more important, if that makes sense. But today we'll work on the background. The background is going to be, like I mentioned, it's going to have a very limited value range. So it's going to be, because it's misty, it's in the background, it's supposed to support the story that's happening in the foreground. All right, so I'm going to, give me just a minute to figure out where to start here. Sometimes when I sit in the studio, it can take me like 5 or 10 minutes just to kind of decide, okay, well, what do I want to do? Where do I want to start? What brush should I use here? I think I want to start painting the tree. And I think I can probably start going in with the oils to make it more painterly. I have a drawing here that has my values, but I want to start turning this into a painting. So I'm probably not going to touch the foreground for now. We can just work on the giant tree. So I'll make a new layer. And pull up my brushes. I want the brush strokes in the background to be pretty expressive. Like I don't want to get too deep into detail. So I will start on a normal layer. as in not a multiply layer. And I'm going to look for a brush. I'm just going to test out a couple of things like this. Oh. It's a little bit too rough. Yeah, that could work. This is on a new layer, so I can just erase it. But I also want to get some canvas texture in there too. Or maybe blender, hold on. A lot of times when I'm having trouble figuring out where to start, I think about how would I approach this if it was a traditional painting, because that's a lot more intuitive for me. And there's so much choice with brushes. Sometimes it can just be a little bit overwhelming. So I have all these Photoshop brushes now, and I need to whittle them down so it's kind of like staring at it when you go into like a Chinese restaurant and the menu is like 20 pages long, and they can make so many things, but you're like, I have no idea what to use. Sometimes you just need like 3 brushes. Um, um, so if I were approaching this as a traditional painting, I would want to have kind of a medium sized angled brush to try to paint in the big forms first and then paint in the other ones after. Cajun Corey, good night. Thanks for joining us today. Sorry guys, I'll catch up with comments in a minute as soon as I get my brain organized. Let's try this one. Actually, that's not too bad. This one has kind of a nice tilt to it, which would imitate a real brush, but can it blend? I want to find the brush that behaves like an oil painting brush, but that has a nice angle. If I could show you guys what I mean here. You guys can see that. This is the kind of brush that I would normally start with. It's called an angled shader. And it's really awesome because you can do washes with it, but then you can also turn it on its point and do lines with it. Best brush ever. One of the drawbacks of digital is that, well, some people get so good with it that that's what feels the most intuitive, but I'm trying to come to it from a traditional background. Bear with me for a minute while I figure out how to start this thing. I can also catch up on comments. I'm not procrastinating, guys. I'm just catching up on comments. Yes, Michaela says it makes sense with our natural vision. Things farther away are naturally lighter or lower contrast. Yes, that's called atmospheric perspective. And it's because air particles add up. Air particles actually do, and water vapor in the air actually builds up over distance and causes the lower contrast in the distance. Fantastic Sarcastic says, are you using less defined line work and wider color gradients in the background as opposed to the foreground to accomplish this? Less defined line work, yes. I want the background to be very, I guess, more expressive. I mean, we can talk about edge work a little bit later, but like, you know, not everything will be very soft. It will be softer than the foreground for sure because it's in the distance, and when you look in the distance, there's blurring that happens because of atmospheric perspective. Wider color gradients, no. It would use a smaller value range. So basically, I would use maybe like 3 shades of gray only in the background to accomplish that low contrast, versus in the foreground where I might use 6 shades of gray and black to accomplish that. Chrysanth, a feline named VJ, do the vitamin D hammer. Basically, I am not a doctor, but it has worked for me. If you look up vitamin D hammer as a flu protocol. If you take large amounts of vitamin D in the first couple of days of the flu, it can help knock out cold and flu symptoms very quickly. Most people are deficient in vitamin D, and it's super, super important for your immune system. So look up vitamin D hammer for the flu. Hope and feel better. Also zinc. Zinc really helps. Okay. No more procrastination. You can try that one. Tile round flex wet with a texture on it. Combined with the wet blender. All right, we can try that. just to get started anyway. So this brush that I'm using is called a mixer brush in Photoshop. And I'm actually going to zoom out because I don't want to get too into the detail here. Mixer brushes in Photoshop behave a lot like oil paints. So I'm going to make a new layer called palette. And I'm going to put a couple shades of gray here, the ones that I want to use. And then I can just toggle this layer on and off. I'm going to sample some values from my image. So the darkest, the absolute darkest I want to go is probably middle gray. It's probably the absolute darkest I want to go. We'll see. Okay. So I'll keep that up here. Switch back to the layer I'm working on. Sample from here. Just start painting. I'm going to try to go a little bit loose so I can get so I can I don't want this background to feel stiff or fussy. And we're just going to try to build up the forms. So you can kind of see already how this brush behaves. It behaves like wet paint, wet oil paint on wet paint. So if I select this color and I paint into this darker area here, it will behave like I'm just putting a lighter color of wet paint in there. So I'm going to turn these trees into blobs, paint them out, and then I'm going to paint them back in. I'm just trying to get rid of some of the lines in here, if that makes sense. I'll leave some of them just so I know what was there. Let's just slap some paint on there. And then I'm gonna take my lighter value and start globbing some paint back in, like so. So it feels a little bit more painterly and less like a drawing. Just try to build up the forms a little bit. Fantastic Sarcastic says, are you going to have a fog effect on the bank of the water? Yes, I will. That will be something that I add much later in the painting. But I can also accomplish it a little bit at this stage just by making my edges very soft in certain areas. I won't go into the dragging yet, we'll just work on some of the landscape. I'm going to focus on really big forms for now. See, that already looks pretty painterly. Add in some of these darker shapes here. Okay, maybe I'll go a little bit darker than that. Zooming out, you can already start to see the difference, how this one looks very, very painterly. And this side is still a drawing. So we'll just keep doing that. I think I'm going to switch to the slightly sharper brush because I want to get a little bit more definition into those trees. On this side, just a little bit. Actually, what I can do is I can go to a hard round brush. This is not a mixer brush. And I can just paint some better edges in there. Nope, this is still a mixer brush. Hold on. Come on, round brush, where are you? So I'm going to paint some leaf shadows in there. Just very messily. And then switch to a lighter color. I can blend those edges a little bit later. So now I'm just kind of breaking up the forms a little bit so they look more like normal trees. Then I'll go back and blend with the oil brush. We don't want to get too fussy or too detail oriented in this early stage of the game because there will be a lot of time for that later. I actually do have a tendency to fuss a little bit and get sucked in, so using these messy brushes helps me to combat that a little bit. That looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay. Now switch back. I'm switching back to the oil brush. I'll blend that in a little bit. Can you guys still hear my music, by the way, when I talk? Yep. Hmm. Excuse me. Okay, now I'll start doing. Let me touch this up a little bit. Oh, it's already 10:13. Let's go ahead and we'll work for another 10 minutes since we started late. And then we'll sign off for the day. And then I'm gonna go to the gym. Right now at the gym, I'm just a little bit of personal info. I threw out my back playing Beat Saber, like just before Christmas, around November. It's just one of those things, man. One of those getting old things. And I'm actually pretty good at Beat Saber, but I hadn't played in a really long time. So now I get to go to the gym and do back recovery exercises. Just like really slow, really taking it easy. But I'm trying to go every day. Trying to be consistent about it. I'm doing better a bit better now, chrysanthemum, but chrysanthemum. Wait, it actually does say chrysanthemum. That was just my brain. My brain like auto-correcting like my phone does. A little bit better now. I still have some like back and hip pain if I sit for a long time, which is very annoying. But it's improved over the last month or so. It definitely improves when I'm really consistent at the gym. I actually do have videos of me playing Beat Saber. I once upon a time I thought it would be super fun to like do a green screen and start a YouTube channel with the background, the Beat Saber background, but that was a lot of work and I have kids, so I never got around to it.
But during COVID, when everybody was on lockdown, that was my exercise. That's how I stayed fit. So I got really into it. And I hadn't played it in like 6 months or something because just just really busy. And I was showing a friend who had never played VR before and felt fine, and then woke up the next morning in super pain, super stiff. And that's when I knew I was old. All those years of sitting are catching up with me. Learn from my mistakes, everybody. Don't sit in a chair for 20 years with poor posture, letting your back muscles grow weaker. Fantastic sarcastic, you'll have to pry them from my cold, dead fingers. No, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't really mind anybody watching those videos. They're pretty cool. They're not terribly exciting because I don't have a cool setup. It's just literally just a camera, like a phone camera of me. Dragon Noodle Soup Gaming, how did you bust your lip? It's not fun. That must have been a bleeder too. Like a couple months ago, my son fell off a stool and busted his lip, and it was a really small cut, but stuff on the face just bleeds. There's a lot of pressure there, so I was freaking out for like a couple minutes until my husband came by and was like, "It's okay, it's cool. Like, let's stay calm, everyone." And then we cleaned it up, and it was just like a little cut, but yeah, those are not fun. Hard. 4 more minutes. I'm sorry to hear that, Michaela. I hope you feel better. Shoulder problems are also very not fun. Gonna tidy up some of this here. And then I think we'll call it done for the day. Today was really fun. I really liked the doodle slash paint format. Maybe we can do that next time as well. Maybe we can check out those firefly bees. We can explore that a little bit. Okay. Zooming out. Save. Command S. Always save. Save every 5 seconds if you have to. Ooh, Michaela, that does not sound fun. I hope your fingers heal quickly. Let's just really quickly, let's go back to, I want to show you guys the thing that we doodled. Where is it? Oh, it's under, I think it's under here. So today, we did a couple things. We doodled a whistling. I'll just hold that up to the camera. We doodled a whistling, so I don't have to change in OBS. And we did a little bit of painting on the underpainting with the book 2 cover. Thanks for joining me today. Tune in next week. Sorry, tune in next time, not next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. And it was really fun today. Thank you, everyone. And thanks for sticking by the late start and technical difficulties.
Have a wonderful day. See you all next time.